Romance has a way of dressing itself in glitter. But the stories we tell about history often wear masks. Tonight, we pull back the velvet curtains to reveal the darker threads woven into historical romances, the bargains, the power games, the secrets that romance readers rarely name aloud. This is the truth behind the candles. The letters stained with ink and regret. The promises that sounded noble until they cost someone their voice. It's a reminder that love can endure, but not without honesty, courage, and a willingness to see what lies beneath the surface. The first truth many readers learn in this genre is that history is built on imbalances that can feel almost cinematic in their cruelty. A gentleman's wit, a duchess's title, a soldier's honor, these are often served as barriers or bridges, depending on who tells the tale. And while a flutter of romance can bloom between two people who deserve each other, the terrain they walk is messy, arranged alliances, debts that bind, reputations that demand a price for truth. In many stories, the heart moves forward while the body is chained to expectations. That tension can be puissant, but it can also hollow out the moment of connection if the narrative never names the cost. Picture a ballroom at dusk. The chandeliers spill light like warm honey, and the air trembles with the hum of music and the soft rustle of silk. The romance here is not just about a kiss, it's about who is allowed to kiss, who is forbidden, and why. The heroine might be clever and brave, yet her choices are often forecast by the men who hold the purse strings. The hero may be generous and noble, but his power is built on land, lineage, and agreements sealed in ink. When these stories forget to acknowledge the pressure behind every tender act, they pretend the world is kind when it's merely patient, waiting for the moment a secret can slip from a letter to a confession. The second dark thread is consent, an ancient knot that romance often tries to untie with a single line of dialogue or a grand gesture. In many historical romances, consent arrives as a plot twist rather than a daily choice. A kiss is a victory, a scandal a plot engine. Yet when consent is treated as a decorative flourish instead of a fundamental right, the story loses its ethical gravity. The romance remains intoxicating, but it becomes a shadow play, where what the lovers want is eclipsed by what the world allows. And when we skim over those moments, we risk teaching a quiet lie that love survives best when it survives alone, apart from the real-world's gritty rules. The clock talks on, and with it the heartbeat of a century, the way power shifts hands at a ball, the way expectation closes doors, the way a woman's choice is measured against the man's reputation. The darker histories aren't always loud, they are patient. They whisper through the etiquette, through the confected smiles at dinner, through the way a letter is drafted to protect a family's name even as it reveals a private ache. Some romances lean into this pain with uncommon honesty, and those are the ones that feel true in the end. They don't pretend that love is a clean equation. They show how love can be a stubborn flame that refuses to go out even when the wind howls. Yet there is a counterweight in these stories, the resilience of women who demand agency, the men who learn to listen, and the communities that refuse to let one voice carry the entire burden of history. The romance that endures is often the romance that grows when the couple stops pretending the world around them doesn't matter. The hero isn't saved by a kiss alone. He is compelled to confront a system, to question a tradition, to admit when he is wrong. The heroine isn't saved by virtue alone. She discovers a well of courage, navigates a treacherous social maze, and learns to speak her truth in a language that can be heard beyond the drawing room. Firelight drips across a parchment, and a letter opens like a wound and a doorway at once. In these pages, the truth sometimes hurts. It reveals debt and danger, the fear that a single mistake can erase years of goodwill. The lovers in these moments often meet not with a sigh of relief but with a choice, to keep the secret, or to tell the truth and risk breaking everything that stands between them. When a story dares to show the cost, it brings a kind of reverence to the idea of happiness. Happiness becomes earned rather than granted. A reward that arrives after a journey through fog and thorn. In the darkest corners, love learns to negotiate with reality. Sometimes that means a compromise that does not feel like a betrayal but a maturing of trust. Other times it means walking away from a dream that cannot exist without bending the world in ways it refuses to bend. These decisions are not failures or melodrama. They are the proof that devotion is not an escape from consequence but a courage to face it together. A romance that survives such trials does not emerge unscarred but more luminous for having survived. Turn the page, and you'll hear the ghost of a whispered vow, the promise to protect a secret. To defend a person's right to choose. To honor a name even when honoring it means letting go of personal whim. The literature that truly endures teaches us that romance is not just a spark in a cauldron of scandal. It is a vow to keep listening. Especially when the world demands silence. When the narrative allows a character to grow past their first impulse, to accept responsibility, to change. The romance stops feeling like a fantasy and begins to feel like a blueprint for real life. Let us talk about the darker allure of history, the sense that every era has its shadows. And every love story reflects those shadows back to us in a mirror we can't stop looking into. This is not a romance that erases the pain, it transforms it into a map. The map shows where help is found. In allies who challenge the status quo. In mentors who teach the art of negotiation without surrender. In communities that celebrate courage more than conformity. When a modern author breathes life into an old setting. The best work crosses time not by ignoring cruelty but by reframing it as something we can choose to heal from. And then there are moments of quiet grace, the way a couple learns to hold space for each other as fear, to give a little ground. To admit when they are not certain. To be brave enough to be gentle. Those small acts accumulate into something lasting. Something that readers recognize as the antidote to cynicism. The most memorable romances from history aren't only about dramatic rescue or grand confession. They are about the patient rebuilding of trust after a betrayal, the long arc of forgiveness. The stubborn persistence of hope in the face of systems designed to keep people apart. The stories that reveal the dark side are, paradoxically, the ones that offer the strongest proclamation of light. They remind us that love is never perfect, never immediate, never simple. It grows in middle ground, the space where two stubborn hearts choose to stay, to listen, to adjust, to repair. To imagine a future that is better, not because the past is erased, but because the people in the present refuse to be defined by it. This is the kind of romance that invites hope without denying pain. That makes us believe in the possibility of a happier ending. Even when the road there is paved with honesty and restraint. And that, perhaps, is the most hopeful truth of all. A romance that truly lasts is not one that pretends the dark side doesn't exist, but one that acknowledges it, learns from it, and steps forward anyway, hand in hand, renewed by the wiser about the price of love. And more certain that a real happy ending is not a myth but a choice made together, again and again, in daylight and in shadow. So if you crave a romance that doesn't disappear at first glow of dawn. If you want a story that stays honest about power, consent, and consequence. You've found a kind of love that endures because it's willing to face the truth. The dark side does not dull the brightness, it sharpens it, reveals its facets. And makes room for a romance that can light a room even when the world remains imperfect. That is the gift these stories offer, not a flawless paradise, but an authentic map of how two people can choose to stay, to grow, and to love with a resilience that finally feels earned. If you've ever waited for a love that respects you, for a partner who grows with you instead of against you, stay with this channel. We'll keep uncovering the truth behind romance, the glitter, the grit, and the grace. And we'll hold space for those moments when history looks away, only to return with a stronger story about what it means to really belong to another person.